Well, there's certainly legitimate concern for the human impact on climate, and plenty of evidence that we are now changing the climate of the Earth. We've never had the case of so many people living on the planet, with 6.2 billion people. We've had a lot of natural variation in the climate system through time. There's certainly plenty of indications of the linkages between human cultures and societies in the past and the climate on the planet. And one of these very distinct events occurred about 4,000 years ago. Now, it shows up in the ice core records of Kilimanjaro in Africa and in the tropical Andes of South America as a very large 300-year drought. And we know that this is in the beginning of some of the early cultures, civilizations here on Earth, and we know from writings the impacts of this particular drought. The ice at the top of the Himalayas records the history of the monsoons in India and Nepal, and we can reconstruct that long before humans were there to record those variations. And in the period where the ice core and the human culture overlap, we can actually look at events such as this major monsoon failure between 1790 and 1796. Tremendous drought in India in 1792 in a small region in north central India. Over 600,000 people died. Now, one of the key questions, of course, is this was in 1792. Just last year, the population of India moved over 1 billion people. The impact of such an event occurring today would be much greater. And so we really need to know how often have we had major failures of monsoons in the past. So this documentation is one of the things that we're working on. One of the problems that we face as the Earth is warming, and the ice gives this very clear message, whether you're in the tropics or in the polar regions, and we're losing an archive of our past. And that archive is disappearing very rapidly. Our recent work on Kilimanjaro, where we've looked at maps, first map made in 1912, and we produced a map in 2000 when we drilled the ice cores from this archive. And if you look at the area of loss of ice, we've lost 80% of the ice on Kilimanjaro since 1912. And if you project this into the future, sometime between 2015 and 2020, the ice fields will disappear. And along with it, our history in that part of the world. And so one of our missions is to not only analyze and interpret the ice core's records today, but to archive part of that core for the future. Because as we go into the future, there will be new techniques developed, new methods of understanding, but if we don't have the natural archive, then we cannot reproduce that history. So we have built 2 freezers. We have 6,000 meters of core currently archived at minus 40 degrees C, and we're working on ways to ensure that that archive is maintained as we go into the future. Well, I think it's very important to study nature and not so much books. I mean, to go out and understand what actually exists in the real world. And the world's a fascinating place. I mean, certainly the science is intriguing, but to have the ability to work in on this fascinating planet in some of the most remote parts of the world is there can be no greater reward.